What's going on? That's Textbook Sports Squad. Today is Tuesday, November 7th. I hope you all are having a fantastic day today and a fantastic weekend. Listen, we had college football. We've only got 3 weeks left in the regular season for college football. That's sad. It's depressing, but we also know and understand that some of the best football playoff implications also are at hand. Gonna have Michigan, Ohio State later in the year. All these conference championship games. And it's absolute chaos in college football. Committee is going to meet tonight. They're going to have new rankings. Is Ohio State still going to be number one? Who's going to be moving up? Who's moving down? Alabama had a key win against LSU. How far do they move up? And how close are they? Washington, Oregon, all took care of business. But listen, in the college football playoff, it looks like just about almost every conference. You look at the Big 12, the Pac-12, the Big 10, the SEC, the ACC, all having these teams vie for one of those 4 spots. In the ACC, Florida State, Louisville. Big 10, Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan. SEC, Alabama, Georgia. Big 12, right now, Texas. Pac-12, Washington, Oregon. It's chaos, and if it meets up and a lot of those teams have only one loss, how is the committee going to sort it out? It just makes it that much more fun, entertaining for us. Then with the NFL, half of the season is gone. Depressing, yes, but also, once again, some of the best football is ahead of us. We're starting to realize and understand who's a contender, who's a pretender. Playoff picture gets a little bit clearer, to understand. Talking about the Dallas Eagles game as well. Depressing, like I said, almost a good chunk of football is gone, but we've also got the best left ahead of us. And so with that being said, as you know it, let's get into this podcast. If you haven't already, follow me on social media. The links to my social media will be in the description. Like this video, subscribe, make sure you hit that subscribe, turn on all post notifications. You don't want to miss any content I have coming up. But right now, as y'all know, that's Textbook. So I didn't know who to start out or how to start out this podcast. Should I talk about CJ Stroud first? Or should I start out with Joshua Dobbs? Both quarterbacks overcoming the odds, having phenomenal performances. Starting off with Josh Dobbs. This guy started off the season with the Cleveland Browns, then on August 24th is acquired by the Arizona Cardinals. Now, October 31st, he's traded from the Arizona Cardinals to the Minnesota Vikings. That is 3 playbooks having to learn in 3 months actually. Now this guy, he is a genius. He has a degree in aerospace engineering. So we know and understand with his degree, he has the capability to understand these 3 playbooks in 3 months more than anyone else. He goes out there, leads his team to a comeback win, only has 4 days to understand the playbook, get familiar. And in the NFL, we always talk about, well, it's chemistry, timing routes. Doesn't have any of the chemistry with his teammates, doesn't know some of his teammates' names, leads a comeback win up against the Atlanta Falcons, Amazing performance for him. Got to give him all of the props and a lot of the praise. And listen, when this trade went down, Josh Dobbs, as I said, a great quarterback. You look at the numbers in man coverage, against zone coverage. Really a different picture, a little bit more difficult for him. But when they traded for him, I thought it was an opportunity for the future that they missed because losing Kirk Cousins, this team you thought was going to enter a little bit of a tank mode. Maybe you pair a young, talented quarterback prospect with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson. Your offense and defensive line, whole team in general, was playing a lot better. Kevin O'Connell's system is very quarterback friendly, although it is a little tough to digest at first. That was no problem for Joshua Dobbs. I thought that was a missed opportunity. But for their goals of Let's just make a playoff push right now. Joshua Dobbs was the guy for them. He could do the most and sustain those goals for them. And you got to give him, Minnesota Vikings, all the props. Now I know it was the Falcons. Arthur Smith and that team is a mess. Bijan Robinson, who the Falcons drafted in the top 10, has only one carry inside the 5-yard line. Arthur Smith, once again, misusing another one of his key playmakers. He's been misusing Kyle Pitts. He's been misusing Bijan Robinson. A guy people thought was going to have this offense high flying. Not really. I mean, they're just a mess. The Falcons are a mess in general. How Arthur Smith is still the head coach of the Falcons is beyond me. Now, talking about CJ Stroud, I'm going to talk about his rise to success and the type of path he had going on from high school to where he is now. In high school, starting off, he really wasn't that much of a highly touted quarterback prospect until he went to the Elite 11. Now, the Elite 11 is this quarterback competition started off by Trent Dilfer. He puts these high school quarterbacks in these pro-like scenarios and shows them what it is like to understand pro concept and to be a pro. The competition, the way they have it, the grading, the scaling is understanding complex pro schemes, playbooks, reads, but then also putting them in drills where they're being graded on the accuracy, the timing, the anticipation of their throws, using that to place them on teams. They place them on a 7-on-7 competition. Whoever wins the tournament most likely is the MVP, and they compile it to the workouts, how you performed in the games for the MVP decision. CJ Stroud doesn't get an invite, but one player, quarterback, either can't go or opts out, so the Elite 11 is having to rethink the process. They give an invite to CJ Stroud, and he just takes off. Sees that opportunity, takes off with it during the competition. Has the highest rated score for one of the workouts in Elite 11 competition. A perfect 50 out of 50 score. He is just absolutely dialed in, locked in, and he's performing up against Bryce Young and other really talented 5-star quarterbacks in that same recruiting class. He's just making a name for himself. Some of the coaches didn't even know how to pronounce his name, know his name at all. Now he goes on, his team wins the tournament, just plays phenomenal, has the footwork, mechanics, everything that you're looking for. Now he's getting all these offers, commits to Ohio State, has a shaky start as a sophomore, but then really starts to take off. He had 400 passing yards with 6 touchdowns, only 2 incompletions against Michigan State. Heisman-worthy type of season. Then follows it up with another Heisman-worthy type of season. Gets drafted by the Houston Texans, 2nd overall. And we see in his recent game, rookie record, 5 passing touchdowns in a game, 470 passing yards. And throughout his season, 14-1 touchdown to interception ratio, throwing 14 touchdowns, 2,000 passing yards, 70% completion percentage. Like I said, with the little things, and we're scouting and evaluating quarterbacks. It's the footwork, mechanics, timing, pocket presence, anticipation, accuracy, all of those things that he had as a high schooler, then refined in the college, collegiate level, refined even more at the NFL level. When you watch all of that and you see, okay, he's got the footwork, he's got the timing, he's got the anticipation. For quarterbacking, it's really like, it's a thing of beauty. It needs to be put in some type of art museum because he just has all of those key things that you look for, and that's why it's making him one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. I don't know how much of a stretch it is. If I'm wrong, please tell me if I am. Let me know in the comments if I am. But I think right now, with how he's playing, and you look at Tom Brady in 2016, minimum 250 pass attempts. Brady had a 14-1 touchdown interception ratio. And CJ Stroud, in his rookie year, With before the season, not many thought the Houston Texans of being a sexy place to develop a quarterback or for a quarterback, especially a rookie. For a rookie to have a 14-1 touchdown to interception ratio, something Tom Brady had in 2016, minimum 250 pass attempts, absurd. I don't think it's a stretch to say right now he's playing like a top 10 quarterback in this league. Let me know in the comment section, do you believe CJ Stroud is a top 10 quarterback in the league right now with how he is playing? And also, a little bit of a debate for this podcast. Who had the better week? Was it CJ Stroud or Joshua Dobbs? Let me know in the comment section what you all think. I mean, both are really worthy of praise because Joshua Dobbs he's having to learn 3 different playbooks in 3 months. Then he has just about 4 days to understand the playbook, get all these things that we talk about with timing, anticipation, accuracy, chemistry. CJ Stroud doing what he does as a rookie, setting all these rookie passing yard records in a single game, touchdowns in a single game, leading a game-winning football drive, 46 seconds, only 2 timeouts, and he felt like he's going to go over there and win this game. Does just that. Let me know who you think. Who had the better week? Stroud or Dobbs in the comments. I appreciate y'all's support and participation. Now, talking about one of the biggest matchups this week, had a lot of division and playoff implications. That is the Dallas Cowboys facing up against the Philadelphia Eagles. Once again, it wasn't pretty for the Philadelphia Eagles, but they still won this game. They're in complete control of the NFC East in the NFL. Only 1 loss on the year. Not pretty, and the thing that concerns me with them is their inability to run the football this year. That could be an offensive line thing, and I think it's a 50-50 when you place the responsibility on the running back and the offensive line. But also, Jalen Hurts, that knee injury is bothering him. You can see the knee brace is bothering him. They have a bye week coming up, so maybe it gets healed just enough. Haven't been using him in a whole lot of running situations. Of course, you want to protect that knee. But their inability to run the football and to set that game away and put that game away, really a little bit concerning. Secondary also did have a tough stretch, but CeeDee Lamb was being used all over that field. You look at the next-gen stats of where he was catching a lot of these passes, it was all over the field, inside the hashes, outside the numbers. Everywhere he was being used. They're going back to how they used him last year. Offensively, it was a good night for the Cowboys. Even though, despite they lost, listen, a ruler is the difference between the Cowboys being first in that division and now being second and 2.5 games away from first place. These two teams are going to meet up later in the year. It's going to be in Dallas. Either way, it was going to be a split. But for Philadelphia, for this to be at home, they really needed this one. They controlled that third quarter. The third quarter was the difference in this game. It was the game of inches for that 2-point conversion and that touchdown that the officials ruled was, but found out it was just inches short to the tight end. The third quarter, and you take that. That's why the Philadelphia Eagles have won this game. Their defensive line came alive, especially late in that drive. Dallas had the ball 27 seconds at the 6-yard line. The thought in my head is Dallas is going to win this game. They're going to walk away and steal this game. You get sack, penalty, then another penalty. Really set them behind. Weren't able to convert. But if you're Dallas, you're feeling good. I mean, you hate to lose this game, and obviously in football, in any sport, moral victories is the last thing you want to take away. But it showed that, yeah, when they're facing up against a top team, they can compete. For the Philadelphia Eagles, it's rest and get healthy. Listen, Dallas Goedert goes down. That's obviously another big chunk of their offense. A.J. Brown, playing phenomenal football, playing like an MVP candidate, in my opinion. If you were to ask me, who are you going to vote for MVP? Right now, I have 3 candidates. Jalen Hurts, because his knee injury, they're not able to really use him in the running game and open up a lot of things for their offense. Lamar Jackson, with the way he's playing, and A.J. Brown. I'd vote for A.J. Brown just because he's been an absolute monster this whole season. Talk about another game that had a playoff-like atmosphere, and obviously, later in the season it's going to be playoff-like implications. We'll be looking at it. That is the Buffalo Bills and Cincinnati Bengals. Cincinnati Bengals, like I said, for the first 4 weeks, we can't judge this team. That's their preseason. Then after that, they get onto a roll. Their winners are 4 straight. Joe Burrow and that offense is getting going. It was interesting for me to see how they were getting the tight ends going. I mean, they had tight ends score 2 touchdowns. Before, when we watched the Cincinnati Bengals, especially in this Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase era, no tight end had caught a touchdown. You have 2 tight ends catching touchdowns. You're using more guys. You finally got T. Higgins involved. We're able to run the game and show that this game was kind of like, even though the score doesn't say it was a lot like last year's playoff game. Bengals able to run the ball a little bit with Joe Mixon. Running game isn't up to par where I would like it to see, but you hope that they can make progress for their sake. Keeping Joe Burrow steady, keeping him upright, limiting the type of pocket pressure he's having to face. Really like what the Bengals have going on offensively. Then for them defensively, Lou Anarumo, I'm going to say it, has to be a head coach. By the time the Bengals season ends, Lou Anarumo has to be a head coach, whether that's for the Raiders or a team whose coach is on the hot seat right now, gets fired later in the season. He has to be a head coach somewhere. How he has that unit, and that secondary especially, playing collectively together. Cam Taylor-Britt really rising up. Had an interception that game. Whole secondary unit. Lots of young guys that they've drafted and developed on there. Then their defensive line with DJ Reader. He's really underrated. Trey Hendrickson, Sam Hubbard on the edges. Playing really, really well football. Got to give a lot of credit to the Bengals. It was a same story from last year's playoff game to this regular season game. Now for the Buffalo Bills, what's going on? I mean, they're 5-4 right now. And there's a lot of conversations that are being had about Josh Allen because Josh Allen has a lot of huge moments. Then he also has his Josh Allen rookie year moments where he just kind of will throw multiple interceptions in a game, make some really wild decisions, really wild passes. Now that's Josh Allen's kind of how he operates. He likes to go outside the pocket, make these throws across his body because he has that arm talent and we all know it. I've been calling for this team to use more than Stephon Diggs, and they are. They're using the rookie tight end, Dalton Kincaid, a lot more. They're utilizing Khalil Shakir. Kincaid's been a lot more consistent, especially these past, I want to say, 3 games. He's been a lot more consistent, but still they have some problem. What that is, I think it's their running game and how they're not able to establish the run. Like, their offensive line, yeah, they'll give up a lot of pressures, and Josh Allen makes up for it with his mobility and how he scrambles around outside the pocket. They have a good pass pro unit, but run unit and a run game offensive line, they really don't have. They don't have guys who can get off their block, go up to the next level. A lot of agile guys on that offensive line to do that. And you see it with their run game. Their best run game is Josh Allen. Now, I will say there's a lot of analysts out there who believe the model for teams now and the way that they look at building their team is supposed to be offensive-minded head coach paired with the quarterback. I do agree with that, and if I'm starting a team, that's how I'm going to start it. Offensive-minded guy paired with the quarterback. We see how it worked for Tua and multiple other quarterbacks, especially young prospects. But it can work defense when you have a defensive-minded head coach, but the offensive coordinator has to be A+. Like you see with the Houston Texans, it's a defensive-minded head coach, but Bobby Slowick and that offensive unit are playing really well. So there are some instances where the defensive-minded head coach can work with the young prospect quarterback or a quarterback in general. It's just that the offensive coordinator has to be A+. When the Buffalo Bills had their most success, and we all understand that playoff game against the Kansas City Chiefs, really hyped about a lot among everybody. But that year when they had their success, you had their head coach, McDermott, defensive guy. But they had Brian Daboll as their offensive coordinator. When Josh Allen had Brian Daboll as his offensive coordinator, that's when Josh Allen really took off. That's when he was gaining a lot of attention and really stepping up. Now that they have had Brian Daboll, we're seeing a lot of the mistakes Allen make from when he was a rookie. So they need that type of stability. This team, yes, they have more outside of Stephon Diggs, at least a little bit more that are consistent. But later in this season, especially playoff football time, if you can run the football and if you have the offensive line to do it, it just helps you that much more. They don't have that. I don't know if they have the right offensive coordinator for Josh and this team. Tough for them. They got a game Monday night in their own house against Denver. We'll see. Is Denver for real in this little run, or are they not? How does Buffalo respond after another loss will be key to seeing. Now, going back to college football, as I mentioned in the intro of this podcast, the committee will be meeting again tonight to put out a new ranking. I don't expect much to change inside the top 4, but I do expect a little bit to change outside of that, especially with Alabama winning over LSU, and you see their path, especially for the SEC championship, gaining control of their division. Top 4, I still think it's going to be Ohio State 1, Georgia number 2, Michigan 3, Florida State 4. That's how I expect the committee to rank it. Now, if I was going to rank it, I'm still going to keep Ohio State number 1. I'll put Georgia in there at 2 with Florida State above Michigan. And I'll have Michigan right there at 4. Just because you haven't played a whole lot of tough opponents. You really haven't played anybody basically. Now this week you get Penn State in Penn State. We know that's going to be an electric environment, although it's an absolute shame that this game has to be at noon. Why are we making this game at noon when it's a battle of 2 top-ranked teams fighting for a college football playoff spot, fighting for, it's a Big Ten matchup. How this isn't a wide out, a night game, primetime game is beyond me. But nonetheless, it'll be a good matchup. It'll be the measurement of how we see Michigan moving after this game. I'll be giving my game picks later on this week, how I think what matchups certain teams, especially Michigan and Penn State, are going to exploit. But I'd have Michigan at 4 just because this is a prove-it week. We'll knock you down a couple spots, but you have to prove it. Now, going outside the top 4, I definitely expect Alabama to be really approaching somewhere either at the 5 or 6 spot. Especially you consider Oregon, in my opinion, they look like the best team in the country. But they do have one loss. And that one loss comes against Washington. So, and you have Washington ahead of them because Washington hasn't lost at all this season. They beat USC. That's how I would see it. I do expect Alabama to be somewhere in that 5 or 6 spot. Maybe Washington drops down a couple spots because they haven't played really great as of late. I'd have Oregon in there at 5, but like I said, I think in my opinion they're the best team in the country right now on paper, how they've executed, how they've looked. And like I said, this is shaping up to be one of the wildest college football playoff decisions later on. If the things happen where Louisville, Florida State, and all these conferences like the Pac-12, like the Big Ten, like the SEC, ACC, Big 12 are having 1 or 2 teams or more vying themselves for a college football playoff spot. That's when it gets really interesting, and it could shape up that way, especially when you look at some of these team schedules ahead and you factor in that they have a very good to likely chance of winning those games. And these things where you have multiple teams only have 1 loss. It just makes it that much more interesting with 4. It would be even more interesting when we go into next year and they have, I believe it's 10 or 12 teams vying for those 12 spots, looking to get into the college football playoff. Going to be an interesting night. Where does Texas rank, and are they going to be ahead of Alabama? Is that something the committee has to look forward to? Because it looks like Quinn Ewers is going to be coming back. Texas wins in a ranked game against Kansas State. A really tough battle with their backup quarterback, Malik Murphy. Texas and Alabama head-to-head goes to Texas. That'll be interesting. Is Texas ahead or below Alabama? Going to be an interesting night. Make sure you watch it. 7 o'clock Eastern Time. Don't want to miss it. Staying with college football, I want to talk a little bit about USC. I thought in the preseason that this was a team that was going to make the college football playoff just because you had Caleb Williams. You felt like they were going to have to get some type of revenge, make it to the college football playoff. But Caleb Williams, first time being there, had a golden opportunity last year, didn't get it. Alex Grinch, with this defense, what they brought in the transfer portal in California, that's a gold mine for recruits in general. I thought this was going to be their year that they made it. I figured he has all the resources. He's just got to put it together. And that wasn't the case this year. Like, Damani Jackson, their cornerback, Corey Foreman, he hasn't, in a lot of the games I've seen, he hasn't been on the playing field a lot. Bear Alexander, they're really talented players. But watching the games, seeing how others break it down, the film, this is a team that on the defense, a lot of them were freestyling out there. And if you're in any type of defensive coverage that the defensive coordinator puts out game plans for, you really can't freestyle and do something else. A lot of that is coaching. You have to coach those guys to stick to the game plan, the coverage. That wasn't happening for them. Lots of broken plays were on that. And then they were going, in that game against Washington, they were going in this like 3 down lineman set. And that's good. I mean, it's a lot of defensive coordinators are doing it now because it's different, it's creative, you can disguise some things, a lot of stuff. But your 3 down defensive linemen have to have gap discipline, understand leverage, and that's just what USC doesn't have right now. They don't have guys that can understand leverage, have gap discipline. And so when you're only doing 3 down defensive linemen, and Washington's coming over there with like 5 offensive linemen, maybe 2 eligible tight end tackles, really tough. And the idea is in this 3 down defensive lineman with either 5 corners or 5 linebackers is, hey, we're going to have all these skilled athletes out there. They're going to fill in the gaps. That really wasn't happening. That's why they've been giving up a boatload of points, yards, etc. It was time for them. But for Caleb Williams, I've seen a lot of people giving him slack and hate this year. And it's almost kind of reminiscent of CJ Stroud and his time at Ohio State. CJ Stroud at Ohio State, he was given a lot of heck because he'd never beaten Michigan, didn't win a college football playoff national championship. They had all these guys offensively, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Marvin Harrison Jr., Jackson Smith and Jigba, etc. Hadn't won a championship, hadn't done all these awards, hadn't beaten Michigan, win a Big Ten championship. I hope we don't do that with Caleb Williams because we see what CJ Stroud is like right now and how he's performing right now. Caleb Williams, okay, you could give him heck because he really doesn't do much, or a lot of his highlight plays and stuff that gets a lot of views and attention isn't in structure. But, I mean, having that type of special ability, a lot of quarterbacks we're seeing it now. Like, Dak, when he's outside the pocket, plays really well, and I think there's a stat out there someone had posted where outside the pocket, Dak is hitting 73% of his passes or 71% of his passes. And then you see it with Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes. Like, when those guys get outside of the pocket, it feels like, you've given up the play. For those quarterbacks that get outside the pocket, you always want to keep them inside the pocket. Caleb Williams really talented special prospect. Accuracy, maybe he doesn't have the footwork or the timing or sometimes not even the anticipation, but you see the accuracy that he has and how special he is on throws when he's on the run and these difficult arm angles. I really hope we don't give him that Stroud treatment that he had in college. Then ESPN later in the game showed he's in the stands with his mom, obviously upset that they lost, having a moment. I mean, to see, just to see in the comments, it was really immature. I thought for people to be down on him for that. Like, okay, maybe doing it in the locker room. A lot of people some who are old school figure, well, he should have done that in the locker room where it's private. Okay, but let's just not grill this guy for having that type of moment. I mean, let's look at it and say this is a guy that really cares about winning, that really cares about the game, that shows emotion and a passion for the game. Like if I was his teammate, a teammate of his, and he's showing that type of passion, it's getting me to buy in more because I know my quarterback, our star guy, our franchise guy, is willing to show this type of emotion and have this type of commitment. They're on the same mentality as me. They want this game just as much as I do. He cares about this game. As I mentioned, really great, talented prospect. I hope we don't give him the Stroud treatment early on and then see what Stroud has done and see that he's still, again, this really talented, generational type of player and for surefire #1 overall draft pick. And lastly, who hasn't, whether you're a passionate fan or not, your team loses a big game in a gut-punching way, you either blow the lead, some type of loss like that in that type of category. I mean, who hasn't cried when their team loses in such type of way? And so if you had to ask me, who is the best team in college football? I'm gonna stay with Kirk Herbstreit. I agree with him. I think Oregon is the best team in college football. I'm really liking what I'm seeing for this team in a physicality standpoint, how they're able to set the edge on offense, especially in the run game. Something really that needs to be studied from all sorts of coordinators. Because their ability to set the edge and have their athletes go make athletic plays, something really special. And then with Dan Lanning and his defensive mindset, how his defenses have performed in the past, and just how brilliant he is defensively. That defense is performing really well. They play with a lot of instincts. When you have a defense that plays fast with instincts and physicality, it usually results in a really good elite defense. And then offensively, they're just doing, like I said, setting the edge. They're giving the ball to their playmakers. Bucky Irving is a really talented running back. I think he's performing right now as one of the best running backs in the country with his production, his stats, and how he's looked so far. Oregon, in my opinion, is the best team in college football, but I've also got to give props to Georgia. Georgia looks like they're finally starting to get it together. Listen, they're doing things without their top 5 prospect and tight end in Brock Bowers. Defense is still coming along. You know that they're going to get things going. They're going to be playing like how they used to be, their brand of football. My opinion, best team to beat Oregon, but then I've also got to look at Georgia. And then another thing I'll say, which I don't understand why we put this team so low and we're not giving them as much recognition so far, and specifically this player, Alabama. It sounds crazy to say that Alabama is a team that others have to watch out for, but you really do. We saw how they looked, and of course, yeah, they lost to Texas early in the season in their home turf. But since then, Of course, Nick Saban is going to have that defense playing elite football, but Jalen Milroe, I don't know if the Alabama coaches are the right type of coaches for him. And I'm not saying anything absurd about Jalen Milroe. I'm not saying that he is a elite quarterback yet so far. I'm not saying he's a Heisman candidate quarterback, but I'm really impressed with the way he's been playing so far. You see, he has that deep ball ability. Like he's really efficient on the deep ball, got really good touch accuracy there. It's the intermediate and the short where he really struggles. Footwork really isn't the best, but he's got raw traits that you're like, okay, if we can find someone to pair up with him that understands what a quarterback needs to succeed, the type of proper footwork, mechanics, all these other things, there's something special brewing with Jalen Milroe because he has the physicals, he's got insane speed, really fast, really talented guy. Just if they could find some way to get their passing game going, especially in the intermediate and short with Jalen Milroe, clean up some mechanics. Maybe it doesn't happen this year. It's probably a little bit too late to happen this year. But if they can do it next year as well, we're looking at another team, Alabama, projection. And if you're looking for someone for Jalen Milroe to really model his game after in the way that they rose to their stardom, especially how they started out at Alabama, it's like a Jalen Hurts-esque model that he could really use and rely on and watch to. Now, moving back to the NFL, if you were to ask me who's the best team in the NFL, I've got to go with the Baltimore Ravens. Like every other team, it really hasn't looked pretty. The Philadelphia Eagles hasn't looked pretty, but they're still 8-1. Kansas City Chiefs hasn't looked pretty. Travis Kelce still hasn't gotten things going. What is their identity offensively? Who else are they going to rely on outside of Travis Kelce? Maybe that's Rashee Rice. I don't know. Kind of a mess on the offense for the Chiefs. Defensively, they've been playing really well. We know with the Dolphins, when they face teams with a similar record to them or a winning record, they kind of fall short. But to me, it's the Baltimore Ravens. Like the AFC North, if the season were to end today, you're having every single team in the AFC North go to the playoffs. Baltimore Ravens have taken care of everyone. Now, the Seattle Seahawks, before this game, I didn't view them as some kind of Super Bowl contender. I thought they were a nice team, especially in the NFC. But Super Bowl contender and that sort of thing, just not yet for them. They have a lot of talented young pieces for them. But the Baltimore Ravens have looked stout all year. Of course, you wonder how they lost that game to the Pittsburgh Steelers. If it wasn't for that, they're tied with the Philadelphia Eagles for the best record in the NFL. I really like the Baltimore Ravens. Lamar Jackson playing efficient football, playing back to like 2019. If you ask any Baltimore Ravens fan, their favorite season, of course, you want to win the Super Bowl, right? But 2019, Lamar Jackson, the way he was playing, the way that football team was playing, how efficient and fantastic they were playing that season as a unit, it's really similar to this year. Defense is playing great. Obviously, you have the best kicker of all time, Justin Tucker. Then you have Lamar Jackson playing back to his 2019 form. The offense is getting going. Run game. Offensive pieces, kind of inconsistent throughout the season, but Odell gets his first receiving touchdown. Glad to see that for him. Baltimore Ravens, if you ask me, best team in the NFL, how they've looked on paper in the eye test. The Miami Dolphins, what is wrong with them? Because they've been this team that they use all this motion. They're one of the fastest teams in the league. But when they play up against teams with a winning record and teams on a similar level to them, they really fall apart. Close game against the Kansas City Chiefs. Could have crawled back into that game. Could have possibly won it had it not been for a couple of mishaps. But what's wrong with this team? In my opinion, I think they use all this fancy motion and all this speed, but I don't really view the Dolphins, at least offensively, as this team that's ground and pound and physical. They really lack a lot of physicality. They started out with the defense, but the defense is starting to be more physical. Bradley Chubb, Jalen Phillips really performing out really well. But offensively, they really can't get their run game going. Now they are missing Devon A-Chain, and a couple of other pieces as well. But the inability for this team to get something going, like physicality-wise, as it's related to football, and in the run game, is really hindering them down. And one of the reasons why they're performing so badly against other teams that have really good and dominant defensive lines. And lastly, to conclude this podcast, we're halfway through the NFL season, and which team has had the best draft class? If you're going to ask me, it's head and shoulders above, clear without a doubt, the Detroit Lions. You have Jahmyr Gibbs. We've seen how he's played with David Montgomery out, how he's taken over the lead role. Now, David Montgomery is going to be coming back. Now it's going to be looking like Gibbs' role is going to be reduced. David Montgomery is going to take a bulk of the carries. But you add Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta playing like a top 5 tight end in the NFL right now. Then you have Brian Branch and how well they've drafted overall. I know this is about this season, but how they've drafted with Aiden Hutchinson and their entire draft class, I'm going to give it to the Detroit Lions. You have, through halfway through the season, you have the best draft class right now. Thank y'all for listening to this podcast and follow me on social media. If you haven't already, go to the description. The links to all my social media, that's TikTok, Spotify, YouTube, Twitter, or X. All the links to those profiles will be in the description. Make sure you go follow me over there. Like this video, subscribe, be a friend, tell a friend, share this podcast out, get this podcast out. And once again, like I said, I thank y'all from the bottom of my heart for following me on social media, liking, subscribing, participating in this podcast. All of that, it really means a lot to me. Thank y'all from the bottom of my heart. Once again, y'all have a fantastic day. Every day is a new day for opportunity to reach your goals and your dreams. God bless y'all. Take care. And until next time, deuces.